A24630. So today our group are going to present about region 4, which is Southeast Asia, and I will be presenting about introduction, climate, and a little bit of sub-region in mainland country on manufacturing activities. So I hope you guys enjoy, and thank you for listening and watching our presentation.
Come to the Southeast Asia. Firstly, we will see the world map. Then we go to the Southeast Asia map and we share you a opening video. Next is we go further into the introduction, climate, environmental problem, culture and history, organization, COVID-19 pandemic, and lastly we have sub-region. Let's go to the world map. In this world map, we can see that there is a red circle that point out of a Southeast Asia. Alright, Southeast Asia is a vast sub-region of Asia, roughly described as geographically situated east of the Indian subcontinent, south of China, and northwest of Australia. The region is bounded by the Bay of Bengal in the west, the Indian Ocean in the south, the South China Sea in the center, the Philippine Sea, and the Pacific Ocean in the east. We go further into a Southeast Asia map. And generally, we can see it has 11 countries, which is number 1 is Myanmar, 2 is Laos, 3 is Thailand, 4 is Vietnam, 5 is Cambodia, 6 is Malaysia, 7 is Singapore, 8 is Brunei, 9 is Philippines, 10 is Indonesia, and lastly is East Timor. Do you know what makes Southeast Asia unique? This is because of pristine beaches, compelling history, sprawling rice terrace, and abundant activity to suit every type of traveler. Also, steeped in rich ancient custom and traditions that are remarkably different from those of the West. Besides that, there are more than 25,000 islands and islets in Southeast Asia. The largest islands in Southeast Asia are New Guinea, which is shared by Indonesia and Papua New Guinea, and also Borneo, shared by Malaysia, Indonesia, and Brunei. Sumatra, Sulawesi, Java, Sumbawa, and Flores are the largest islands of Indonesia. And Luzon and Mindanao are the largest islands of the Philippines. 2.0 Introduction. Southeast Asia consists of various historical influences, religious traditions, and linguistic diversity. Some of the world's longest established indigenous groups still live in traditional ways amid expanding modern cultures. Also, commerce and conquest brought a lasting imprint of Buddhism, Hinduism, and Islam to the region. Next, the region located in geographic from the Indian Ocean to Pacific Ocean. Yet, from ancient times, Southeast Asia has been considered by its neighbors to be a region in its own right and not merely an extension of their own lands. The Chinese call it Nanyang and Japanese Nanyo, both names meaning South Seas, and South Asians use such terms as Suvarnabhumi in Sanskrit, meaning of land of gold, to describe the area. It is traded from China, India, and the Arab world, exchange goods in the region, and also influences local human geographic pattern. Southeast Asia is a region containing some of the world's wealthiest countries and others that are materially impoverished. Per capita wealth is higher in Singapore. Thailand, Indonesia, Brunei, Malaysia, and the Philippines are in the middle group. Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, and Myanmar remain in material poverty. In 1,500 years, Portuguese traders, Spanish, Dutch, British, and French merchants took control most of the kingdom, sultans, and chiefdoms. In this introduction, we can see what the relation Southeast Asia with European, United States, and World War II. The figure shows the flow from Indian Ocean to Pacific Ocean. European controlled trading companies used regional population to extract raw material for export to Europe. And there also imported Chinese and Indian labor who worked in mines and plantations and added to today's multicultural population. In this slide, we can see the figure shows laborers from China and Indian at plantation. And do you know European countries dominate Southeast Asia, which are Great Britain, France, Spain, the Netherlands, and the United States were the imperialist countries that had colonies in Southeast Asia. Portugal also had a colony in the region, but had the least impact. Nationalism arose as the result of political movement organized to restore the country independence. All colonized countries in Southeast Asia became independent by 1965. France captured Saigon in 1859 and extended her colony to include Annam, Tonkin, Laos, and Cambodia. Great Britain. Burma was under the British rule from the late 19th century until 1948. Britain governed the Malay Peninsula as the Straits Settlements until 1957. The Netherlands. The Indonesian archipelago was colonized by the Dutch during two periods, 1605 until 1999 by the Dutch East India Company and 1825 to 1930s by the Dutch government. Portugal occupied Malacca from 1511 to 1641 when it was taken over by the Dutch and continued the rule over Timor. Spain. The Philippines was governed by Spain from 1565 until 1898 when Spain was defeated by the United States in the Spanish-American War. And lastly, the United States, as a peace settlement with Spain in 1898, the United States occupied the Philippines under her independence in 1946. Only Thailand, then known as Siam, succeeded in maintaining its independence. World War II. In World War II, Japanese occupied most of Southeast Asia. In the post-World War II years, Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, and the Philippines resisted the diffusion of communism from the north that overtook Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia. This is a picture of Japanese soldiers in World War II. For your information, the late 1930s and the 1940s were a time of shifting diplomatic alignments in Southeast Asia. Because Europeans and Americans were preoccupied with domestic economic problems and with defending against the German advance in Europe, they were less interested in their Asian colonies, thereby opening opportunities for Southeast Asian nationalists to assert leadership. At the same time, Japan was extending its economic influences and military power, moving southward through China into Southeast Asia. The Japanese cultural campaigns proclaimed that Asia should be ruled by Asians and promised independence from the Western colonial or imperialist rule. At first, some Southeast Asians admired and welcomed the Japanese. However, when the promised independence was not forthcoming, Southeast Asian nationalists, many of whom has been leaders in resisting Western colonial rules, as in Indonesia, Myanmar, and Vietnam, mounted underground movement to drive the Japanese out. In Thailand, the anti-Japanese movement, the Free Thai or Seri Thai, had several branches, some operating from outside the nation and some working underground in Thailand to sabotage the Japanese. The most significant development of the World War II period in Southeast Asia was the Southeast Asia nationalists seized the opportunity for leadership and nationalist independent movement flourished. United States. So what the relationship United States with Southeast Asia? United States foreign policy contributed to the geopolitical developments of the region. The domino theory used to support the US policy, and the main objective is to stop the spread of communism. In 1967, Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines, Singapore, and Thailand established the Association of Southeast Asian Nations (ASEAN) to combat this political threat. Domino theory, also called domino effect, theory adopted in US foreign policy after World War II, according to which the fall of a non-communist state to communist will precipitate the fall of non-communist government in neighboring states. The theory was first proposed by Press Harry S. Truman to justify sending military aid to Greece and Turkey in 1940s, but it became popular in the 1950s when Press Louis T. Eisenhower applied it to Southeast Asia, especially South Vietnam. The domino theory was one of the main arguments used in the Kennedy and Johnson administrations during the 1960s to justify increasing American military involvement in the Vietnam War. Southeast Asia is a tropical subregion of Asia covering an area of approximately 1.6 million square miles. It comprises of countries and territories that are located south of Korea, Japan and China, north of Australia, to the east of India, and to the west of Papua New Guinea. The region is bordered by East Asia, South Asia, the Pacific Ocean, the Bay of Bengal, Indian Ocean and Oceania. It is the only region of the continent of Asia that is located both in southern hemisphere and within the northern hemisphere. The region is comprised of islands and the mainland and includes 11 countries. Southeast Asia has a population of approximately 640 million people and making it the world's third most populous region after South and East Asia. In this the map shows climate in Southeast Asia. There are 7 climate classification. Number 1, equatorial climate (AF). Number 2, monsoon climate (AM). Number 3, tropical savanna climate (EW). Number 4, warm oceanic climate or humid subtropical climate (CFA). Number 5, temperate oceanic climate (CFB). Number 6, humid subtropical climate (CWA). And lastly, number 7, humid subtropical climate or subtropical oceanic highland climate (CWB). Let's move to 2.0 climate. The climate have two, which are 2.1 equatorial and 2.2 oceanic. Equatorial climate is also referred to as tropical rainforest climate and is defined as a tropical climate. Massive clouds form and gravity pulls the condensed moisture back to surface form of convective rain. In your left side, the figure shows a forest located in Sarawak. Oceanic. Oceanic climate, also known as a marine climate or temperate oceanic climate. The warm water air rises and cooler air moves from the water to the land form a sea breeze. on your right side the figure above located in Maya Bay, Thailand. So let's go further for equatorial characteristic. Malaysia, Indonesia and the southern part of Philippines have hot and raining weather along the year. It usually covers up to 10 degrees of latitude on either side of equator. The surface air is heated by the nearly 90-degree angle of the sun. Average annual temperature is 30 degrees to 35 degrees Celsius. Precipitation is also very high because of high humidity. Lastly, 60 to 100 inch is average rainfall spread uniformly throughout the year. So the picture shows a long Pasir Sabah and at the bottom Khao Sok National Park, Thailand. 2.2 Oceanic characteristic. The island and narrow peninsular environment are surrounded by water. Tall clouds build up in the afternoon. Intensive thunderstorm rains occur in the late afternoon and evening. Nights are mostly clear as air drains back from the cooling land to the ocean in the form of a land breeze. The monthly mean temperature below 22 Celsius in the warmest month and above 0 Celsius or -3 Celsius in the coldest month. The northern Philippines, Indochina mainlands, Thailand and Myanmar experience a monsoon tropical climate environment. The region's tropical oceans have higher water temperature through the year. So this is a picture of Boracay Beach in Philippines. For your information, the West Pacific is subject to frequent typhoons or hurricanes. The region's tropical oceans have high water temperature through the year, which fuel the formation of intense tropical weather system. Southeast Asia is at the western end of the oceanic and atmospheric circulations that cause the El Nino fluctuations of western Latin America. When Peru is dry, this region has plentiful rains and vice versa. During the major 1997 to 1998 El Nino event, Indonesia suffered intense drought and forest fire while Peru had unusual deluge of rain. Although Mother Nature doesn't always follow the rules, the weather in Southeast Asia is somehow predictable. Most countries experience two distinct seasons, wet and dry. Unless you are up in elevation, this region of the world sits close enough to the equator to stay warm throughout the year. And tropical or not, nights often feel cool anyway after an afternoon of sightseeing in scorching temperatures. Sunny and warm are the ideal conditions for any trip to Southeast Asia, but famous attractions and popular destinations are the most crowded during the dry and sunny months. Traveling during the raining season is a mixed blessing. Although rain and mud may affect outdoor plans, such as jungle trekking and scuba diving, you will encounter fewer tourists and can negotiate better price on accommodation. When is monsoon season in Southeast Asia? June to October is Laos, Thailand, Cambodia and Vietnam. November to January is Singapore. Indonesia is around November to April, and Philippines is June to September. So, tips when it's come to monsoon season. Always be prepared when traveling during the monsoon season. Weather can change with little warning. Carry necessary rain and emergency gear and build buffer days into your itinerary, particularly if you have a flight to catch. Heavy rain can affect road conditions and cause delays in public transportation. Additionally, as wet conditions cause an increase in the mosquito population, dengue fever become prevalent. Learn how to protect yourself and know the symptoms of this mosquito-borne illness. And don't forget to bring bug spray.
Assalamualaikum and hello everyone. My name is Swada Nabila binti Syamsuddin. I'm going to cover about two subtopics which are environmental problem and cultural history and colonialism. Hope you guys can understand this very well and enjoy.
Moving on to the next slide, I'm going to explain about environmental problems that often happen in Southeast Asia.
Many people from this region live close to plate boundaries must experience with earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. This is because Southeast Asia cities, especially coastal cities, are located in a risk hotspot, which is one of the most disaster-prone locations on the planet. Besides that, rising temperatures lead to intense heat, which expose the region to natural disasters such as floods, droughts, and torrential rain. The tropical environments of Southeast Asia harbor many diseases such as malaria, cholera, typhoid, and rabies. The reason why Southeast Asia is at risk from emerging infectious diseases are complex. The region is home to dynamic systems that enable microbes to exploit new ecological niches. These processes include population growth, urbanization, changes in food production, agriculture and land use, water and sanitation, and the effect of health system through generation of drug resistance. Pinatubo is a complex of lava domes located 100 km off Manila City, Luzon Island, Philippines. Prior to the eruption, Pinatubo was non-volcano and it had been dormant for 400 years. There were no known historic eruptions. Before the eruption in 1991, Pinatubo was 1,745 meters high, which is 250 meters more than now, and was only 200 meters higher than the nearby peaks. Pinatubo mostly noted for a failed geothermal development project. The Pinatubo eruption on 15 June 1991 was the second largest volcanic eruption of the 20th century. The explosions announced the reawakening of Mount Pinatubo because Pinatubo was not even listed in catalogs of world volcanoes and it had been dormant for 400 years. At that time, Pinatubo was having an elevation of 1,745 meters or 5,725 feet and lacked the classic conical shape of a volcano because erosion had curved its summit into a red ridge with steep jungle-covered slope, and there was no written record of any eruptions. Scientists at the Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology took the reawakening of Pinatubo very seriously. knowing that the longer the ripples between eruptions, the more dangerous a volcano may be. I will show you a video that I found when the eruption happened.
Did you hear any sound or anything?
When that first big blast happened on the 12th of June, there were several airmen around, a lot of excitement about that.
You know, people after the first eruption would come and say, "Was that the big one? Was that the big one?" It was like,
this first eruption covers the once green area near the summit with a thick blanket of gray ash. And there's lots more where that came from.
This sucker's huge this time. We got to get out of here pretty soon. That stuff gonna come down right on us this time.
Pyroclastic flows roar down from the summit in all directions. Even from 15 miles away, these flows overwhelm the horizon.
I'm so scared after watching this video. By the way, do you guys know why Indonesia and Philippines always experience volcanic eruption and earthquakes? This is because both of them are in the Ring of Fire. What is Ring of Fire? I have prepared a PowerPoint about the Ring of Fire. Please watch it. Do you guys know about the Pacific Ring of Fire? The Ring of Fire, or also known as the Circum-Pacific Belt, has dominates the Pacific Ocean. It is a string of at least 415 active and dormant volcanoes that form a semicircle or horseshoe shape around the Philippine Sea Plate, the Pacific Plate, Juanda Fuca and Cocos Plate, and the Nazca Plate. There's a lot of seismic activity in the area. Volcanoes relate to the belt throughout its length, which is 25,000 miles. Thus, it is called the Ring of Fire. A series of dead ocean trough frame the belt on the ocean side, and continental land masses lie behind. Most of the world's earthquakes, the overwhelming majority of the world's strongest earthquakes, and approximately 75% of the world's volcanoes occur within the Ring of Fire.
On 4 June 2023-28 local time, a large earthquake that had a magnitude of 7.9 occurred near Enggano Island off the coast of Sumatra that killing 103 people and injuring 2,000 more. Almost 90% of the structures on the island were destroyed. Most of the fatalities occurred in the city of Bengkulu on the island of Sumatra. It was felt as far away as Singapore, Johor Bahru, Kuala Lumpur and Petaling Jaya in Malaysia, where many high-rise buildings were shaken. In Indonesia, there are 147 volcanoes and 76 of them are active volcanoes that spread along the islands of Java, Lesser Sunda, Sumatra and Celebes. Volcanoes in Indonesia are known as fire mountains. There are 20 most active volcanoes and among of them are Merapi, Kaba, Kerinci and Bromo. It can be said that Indonesia is a country that having the most active volcanoes in the world. The Volcanological Survey of Indonesia is the main organization that keeping an eye on volcanoes in Indonesia. They monitor Merapi, Sinabung and other Indonesian volcanoes non-stop, but it is hard and almost impossible to predict the volcano's activity. Tsunamis is a Japanese word, su meaning harbor and nami meaning wave. Tsunami are waves caused by sudden movement of the ocean surface due to earthquakes, landslides on the seafloor, landslipping into the ocean, large volcanic eruptions or meteorite impact in the ocean. It often happens in the Pacific Ocean and Indonesia because the Pacific rim bordering the ocean has a large number of active submarine earthquake zones. Most of the peninsula and island nature where the Indian and Pacific Ocean meet is in Southeast Asia. On 26 December 2004, 9.1 magnitude earthquake happened under the Indian Ocean and produced a series of devastating tsunamis. Within hours of the earthquake, killer wave radiating from the epicenter slammed into the coastline of 11 Indian Ocean countries, damaging countries from the East Africa to Thailand. This tsunami, also known as 2004 Boxing Day tsunamis.
I will show you guys the video about 2004 Boxing Day tsunami.
The earthquake's magnitude was measured between 9.1 and 9.3, making it the third most powerful quake since 19th. The tsunami's wave traveled across the Indian Ocean at 500 mph, which is the speed of a jet plane. There were 227,898 people killed or listed as missing and pre-assumed dead in all countries that were affected. The worst hit country was Indonesia with 167,514 people listed as dead or missing. The Sumatra-Andaman earthquake, which caused the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami, is estimated to release an energy equivalent to 23,000 Hiroshima-type atomic bombs. In Banda Aceh, the landmass closest to the quake's epicenter, tsunami wave topped 100 feet. As you guys can see in the slides, there are pictures of the Banda Aceh after the tsunamis. Total material losses in the Indian Ocean region were 10 billion. Maldives was one of the places that was affected. The tsunami struck the Maldives at around 9:30 a.m. local time. Residents have felt the earthquake but thought little of it. 10% of Maldives was left uninhabitable within the span of just 15 minutes. The death toll from 2004 tsunami in the Maldives was 82, including 2 British tourists, and an additional 14 others were missing. Here's the picture of Maldives after the tsunamis. The use of natural environment in areas of high population density and modern industrialization contributes to natural hazards. Even when humans try to expand in agriculture sectors, but it will still lead to deforestation, which they cut the forest to export lumber. Rapid loss of forests will lead to soil erosion, watershed flooding, and destructive offshore sedimentation of fisheries. We can get example from warfare in Vietnam in 1916 and 1917 that defoliated forests and produced chemical residues and burial sites that takes decades to recover. Pollution is one of the main issues in Southeast Asia, and every year there will be a lot of cases reported regarding the pollution. The reason of this pollution is one of the main issues in Southeast Asia, and every year there will be a lot of cases reported regarding the pollution. The reason of this is because of industrial activities increase, more vehicles are used, and farmers always use pesticides and fertilization to protect their plant. In Borneo and Sumatra, in 1990s, forests were lit with fire so it can be cleared for planting oil palms, and coupled with an El Nino enhanced drought. The impact of this activity was Malaysia and Indonesia were covered with dense smoke, and one of the Indonesian commercial airlines crashed because of this smoke. Besides that, illegal and corrupt logging industry also exacerbated existing environmental conditions. In Sarawak, around 19% of forest logged at least once and listed as the highest rate of deforestation in the world. The longest finest political parties that will prepare areas for tree felling has an example that happens in allegation of timber-related corruption by Chief Minister and his family. In 2001, the Malaysian government decided to take part in certifying that its timber exports come from well-managed forests. Then, in 2002, Macros, a large Swiss supermarket chain, committed itself to buying and support ecological sources to oppose the illegal and corrupt logging. Next is cultural history and colonialism. Prehistoric migrants came to Southeast Asia from the north, filtered southward through the large river valleys, and diffused across the island archipelagos. This diffusion causes the diversity in human geography of the region. The current political boundaries are caused by the colonial territories. Moor and Khmer stayed at the center of the Khmer Empire between 800s and 1200s. Then Vietnamese, Lao, and Burmese arrived in the territories which now form their national centers. Hindu and Buddhist religions were brought by India across the ocean from the west. We can see the impact of Indian traditions and architecture reflect in temples such as Angkor Wat in Cambodia, and this is why Western labels Cambodia, Laos, and Vietnam as Indo-China. In the 1st century, Vietnamese kingdom made the Red River Valley in the north. Chinese dynasty would conquer and reconquer the area, and Chinese methods of government and administration were applied. However, the Vietnamese repeatedly fought to get the control, and they succeeded to retain their different identity. Then, they extended their land southward across all the coastal kingdoms and take over some of the territories at the mouth of Mekong River in 1400s. Sri Lanka monks disseminated Buddhism at Myanmar, thus Myanmar became Buddhist. The central pagan kingdom situated around present-day Mandalay, which is a city in Myanmar, in northern Myanmar, fought powerful tribes, including the Shan and Karen, which continued to resist the Myanmar government attempts to draw them into the country's mainstream until today. The Mongols and the Pagan Empire. After they left, Myanmar remained divided until 1700s because the efforts to promote Burmese expansion led to conflicts with British and India. A group of Thai-speaking people moved from western to southern China at the time of Mongol advance. Then, in western part of the Indo-China Peninsula, they are forming a unified political grouping by the 1300s with its center at Ayutthaya. The conflicts between Myanmar and Cambodia and when their people established their cultural territory and became modern Thailand. External influence brought frequent shifts in power to the island groups that now form Malaysia, Indonesia, and Philippines. Migrants in Indonesia brought more than 100 ethnic groups and language. Traders and invaders from India and China came to the island to fuel the establishment of rice-based kingdom on Java. During 600s to 800s, the ruling dynasties controlled the Malay Peninsula and Indonesia, and they built the Buddhist monuments on Java. Buddhism added Hindu elements in some areas such as Bali after around 1000. But Hinduism and Buddhism gave way to Islam in Malaysia and Indonesia. A Filipino culture appeared from mixed Malay, Indonesian, and Chinese influences. There is an arrival of Muslim group during the 1200s. The local sultanates established at Malacca and now known as Malaysia and Brunei controlled the island's trade. Malaysia, Indonesia, and Brunei are majority Muslim in religion, and Indonesia being the world's largest Islamic state. As you guys can see in the slide, there is a picture of Pura Besakeh temple located in Bali. This temple is the biggest and oldest temple in Bali. This temple is among the most sacred and important Hindu sites on the island. Pura Besakeh is a group of temples found in Indonesia, Bali in Southeast Asia, and they sit part away up the side of Mount Agong at approximately 1,000 meters above sea level.
The colonies and independence.
The Portuguese were the first colonial force to establish trading centers in the Philippines. They were forced out by the Spanish, who built their capital at Manila on the island of Luzon. Spanish control attracted Roman Catholic priests and their monastic orders, which control over the vast lands and resources. Filipinos became the only large Christian country in Southeast Asia because they united many different groups. Spain retained its Philippines colonies until the late 1800s. Then, United States takes control over Philippines after winning a war with Spain over Cuba, which is Spanish-American War. Filipino opposition to colonial rule during 1900 and under occupation in World War II. The Philippines Republic was established in 1946. US retained its military until 1919, but then reactivated some of the bases after attacks on 11 September 2001. In 2001, the US government is on a 14-year effort to deal with terrorist threat in southern Philippines, where majority of the country's Muslim population live. Small number of US personnel help Philippine government countering transnational terrorists continuously. Java and the surrounding islands became the Dutch East Indies, or now known as Indonesia colony in 1799 after fighting among Spain, Portugal, Netherlands, and Britain. The trading headquarters of the Dutch East India Company was at Batavia City, that now known as Jakarta, and become their colonial capital. Local farmers are focusing to produce coffee, rubber, and other new crops, but neglect to produce food production until many of them in famines. Nationalist movements were motivated by harsh Japanese treatment during their World War II occupation. Even the Dutch resist to give independence after the war. They still gained the independence in 1915 and new country of Indonesia is formed. The Portuguese take over Malacca in 1511 to control over Spice Trade, but they lost the regional control to Dutch and Dutch succeeded to control Malay Peninsula in 1600s. The Dutch established a regional spice trade monopoly that lasted over 100 years. In the late 1700s, the British founded a part and rival training center on Penang Island that related to their sales of Indian opium. In 1804, British and Dutch agreed to control over Malaya and East Indies together. Then, on 1819, the British put a new port at Singapore and controlled the Malay state by diplomacy. The sultanates from Borneo and northeastern coastlands became British protectorates administered from Singapore. Tamil and India laborers were brought to Malay Peninsula and they were divided in different areas to work such as rubber plantations and tin mines. In the World War II, Japanese took Malaya, but the British re-established their rule to fight against Communist guerrillas until independence was granted to Malaya in 1957. Sabah, Sarawak and Singapore joined the Federation of Malaysia on their 1963 independence. Brunei decided to stay out of that federation because Sultan Omar Ali Saifuddin III refused to join Malaysia as he could not accept Malaysian terms, for example, the control of Brunei's revenue and Sultan contribution to the federation government. Besides that, after 2 years of independence, Singapore decided to leave after having problems in maintaining its largely Chinese identity among the Malay majority in Malaysia. The British colonized Burma, that now known as Myanmar, and made it province of British India. Rice growing industry was developed by British in the Irrawaddy River Delta, and they built the port of Yangon, that also known as Rangoon, to export rice. Over 1 million Indians moved to Myanmar and became the leaders of the country's commercial community. British tried to unify the newly developed Lower Burma with the main Burmese around Mandalay and hill tribes. The main independence group sided with the Japanese in World War II after riots against British in 1913, but they changed sides towards the end and gained independence in 1948. The French colonized Indochina, which consists of Cambodia, Laos and Vietnam during 1800 and early 1900. French put roads, railroads, and encouraged manufacturing. During World War II, Nazi Germany colonized France and persuaded them to allow the Japanese forces to pass through Indochina. After the war, the French tried to re-establish control over the area, but communist groups forced them to leave the northern parts of Vietnam in 1954. Because of the divided country, which is communist north and free market south, the warfare still happens in which United States supported South Vietnam. Then in the 1974, North Vietnam won and reunified the country. Laos went through so much conflict along its borders during Vietnam War that made their economic development slower. In 1953, Cambodia gained independence but suffered 13 years of civil war and takeover by the Vietnamese. Thailand was known as Siam from 1856 to 1939 and 1945 to 1948. The term Thai was used for the first time in 1900. Thailand succeeded in maintaining their independence during the colonial era with a strong monarchy and a series of cooperative relationships with European powers. After the ending of absolute monarchy in 1932, a strict bureaucracy ruled despite many political changes, which is 19 military coups, 15 tree governments, and 16 regulations from 1932 to 1999. The influence of the bureaucracy can be seen in the identical school buildings in all 76 provinces. Thailand rulers made a commercial agreement with Britain and encouraged modernization. There is a short war in 1819 when the French tried to make it part of Indochina. Thailand surrendered one of their land, which is now known as Cambodia, to France and some of the Malay Peninsula to Britain. In World War II, Thailand helped to give an access for Japanese army to conquer Burma and Malaya. Thailand get back their territories it claimed in Malaya and Cambodia. The fighting in 1916 and 1917 made it seem that Thailand will fall to the worldwide communists. The Thailand started to strengthen its border, attracting considerable financial aid from the United States to help it resist.
Assalamualaikum and hi everyone, I am Intan. So today we're going to learn about Southeast Asian, right? So I'm here today to explain to you guys about the organization of Southeast Asian, the current issues on coronavirus, and the economic activities in Insular Southeast Asian. So I hope that every one of you will gain some input from our sharing. Happy watching everyone!
Hi, so I will explain on the subtopic 5.0 organization. So under the subtopic, there is two organization, which is 5.1 Association of Southeast Asia, ASEAN, and 5.2 is Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation, APEC. So I will explain more in the next slide. Association of Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN for short. So what is ASEAN? It is an association that today consists of 10 Southeast Asian states. It was initially a defensive alliance rather than a trading one, but the peace is established from a basis for economic growth. In 8 August 1967, Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, Singapore, and Thailand founded ASEAN. In addition to the 5 original members of ASEAN, Brunei joined in 1984, and Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, and Vietnam all joined in the 1990s. The aims of ASEAN are to accelerate the economic growth, social progress, and cultural development in the region, and to promote regional peace and stability. So what is the challenges of ASEAN? Cultural differences in religion, language, and systems of governance and justice, among others, and the extreme economic competition that exists between the member countries for foreign capital and foreign investment are the challenges that ASEAN face. These are the list of ASEAN members, which consist Myanmar, Thailand, Singapore, Cambodia, Indonesia, Malaysia, Vietnam, Laos, Philippines, and Brunei Darussalam. Moving to the second organization, Asian Pacific Economic Cooperation, APEC for short. So, what is APEC? It is a multilateral organization that are more geographically inclusive economic alliance which may overshadow any gains made by ASEAN. The APEC organization refers to its membership as member economies, not member countries. It is founded on November 1989 at Canberra, Australia by Bob Hawke. The headquarters of APEC is Singapore and the chairperson is Muhyiddin Yassin. APEC made up of 21 members including many countries in East Asia, Southeast Asia, Australia and New Zealand, Western Latin America and Canada, and the United States. Members of APEC are working together to its common goal, which are to link the growing economies around the Pacific Ocean margins and to provide an alternative and formidable major world trade grouping to that of the North Atlantic area. So, what is the challenges of APEC? The different perception of what constitutes a fair economic treatment of individual countries' agricultural products and what is the appropriate political interaction with Taiwan are the challenges that APEC face. These are the list of APEC founding members, which includes Australia, Brunei, Canada, Indonesia, Japan, Singapore, South Korea, Malaysia, Thailand, United States, New Zealand, Philippines, China, Hong Kong, Chile, Mexico, Chinese Taipei, Papua New Guinea, Vietnam, Russia, and Peru. Next subtopic is about the current issues on coronavirus.
What is coronavirus? Coronavirus, or it is called as COVID-19, is an infectious disease that caused by newly discovered coronavirus. The coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic is the defining global health crisis of our time, and it is the greatest challenge we have faced since World War II. According to World Health Organization, most of people who are infected with the COVID-19 virus will experience mild to moderate respiratory illness and recover without requiring any special treatment. As we all know, there is currently no treatment specifically approved for COVID-19 and no cure for an infection, although treatments and vaccines are currently under study. People who have the virus only need to isolate themselves to stop spreading the virus to others, and the doctors can only help to treat the symptoms such as fever, cough, flu, and etc. What is pandemic? Pandemic of a disease prevalent over a whole country or the world. In other words, it is a disease outbreak that spreads across countries or continents. According to the World Health Organization, COVID-19 can be characterized as a pandemic due to the rapid increase in the number of cases outside China over the past 2 weeks that has affected a growing numbers of countries. Pandemics are usually declared for influenza A, and this is the first time that a pandemic has been declared for a coronavirus. Based on the Jakarta Post, since the SARS-CoV-2 virus is rather similar to influenza A H1N1, which was declared a pandemic in 2009, Malaysia can tweak its National Influenza Pandemic Preparedness Plan (NIPPP) prepared in 2006 after the Nipah virus outbreak in 1999, so that it will suit the COVID-19 pandemic. So what is National Influenza Pandemic Preparedness Plan? NIPPP is actually a document which serves as a time-bound guide for preparedness and response plan for influenza pandemic. It provides a policy and strategic framework for a multi-sectoral response and contains specific advice and actions to be undertaken by the Ministry of Health at the different levels, other governmental departments and agencies, and non-governmental organizations to ensure that resources are mobilized and used most efficiently before, during and after an influenza pandemic episode. The government used the National Influenza Pandemic Plan as a guideline to overcome coronavirus in Malaysia. This plan has been used since H1N1 outbreak in Malaysia. One of the major objectives of this plan is to reduce the opportunities for human infections with the virus. So, where the virus came from? According to Sarah Nui, the source of COVID-19 is believed to be a wet market in Jianghan District, Wuhan, Hubei, China, which sold both dead and live animals, including fish and birds. It is also called as Huanan Seafood Wholesale Market. The market gained media attention after being identified as a possible point of origin of COVID-19 and the resulting pandemic. The market was closed at 1st January 2020 for sanitary procedures and disinfection. The markets pose a heightened risk of viruses jumping from animals to humans because hygiene standards are difficult to maintain as live animals are being kept and butchered on site. In late 2019, the market passed city official inspections according to the Wall Street Journal. However, Time reported it to have unsanitary condition. It had narrow lanes and stalls in close proximity, where livestock were kept alongside dead animals. According to Business Insider, it was common to see animals openly slaughtered and carcasses skinned in the market. The New York Times reported that sanitation was dismal with poor ventilation and garbage piled on wet floors. According to Sarah Nui, the animal source of COVID-19 has not been yet identified, but the original host is thought to be bats. Bats were not sold at the Wuhan market, but may have infected live chickens and other animals sold there. Who is the most at risk? Based on WHO, COVID-19 can be transmitted person to person, usually close contact with the infected patient by COVID-19 like family, household workforce, or people who surrounding with infected patient. So this is very important that whoever have close contact with the infected patient, they are mandatory to make a swab test immediately at the nearest hospitals or clinic. While waiting for the result of the swab test, the patient needs to have their self-quarantine for 14 days to prevent the possibility of spreading the virus to other people. The Jakarta Post statement states that who has chronic illness also has possibility to get infected by coronavirus. Many died by coronavirus person who has chronic illness, which is like older people, diabetes, and etc. WHO also states that healthcare center also has possibility most risk to get the virus. Healthcare workers is a person who always have direct contact with the infected patient, such as doctors and nurses. These three pictures shows the person who is the most at risk to be infected with the virus. So the first picture is frontliners or healthcare workers such as doctors and nurses. Second, person who have close contact with infected patient. And last picture is senior citizen. This slide shows the worldwide number of cases coronavirus as at November 6, 2020 by country. As we can see in this graph, it shows a total number of infections for 49 million in all over the world, which shows a huge number of infections. The highest country that got infections of COVID-19 is USA with almost 10 million, followed by India, Brazil, Russia, and France. And here the table shows the number and changes of coronavirus cases and deaths among the most impacted countries worldwide as at November 2, 2020. So here we have the total number of infections where USA hold the highest number. We have average daily number of new cases in last 7 days, total numbers of deaths and the change in average new deaths last 7 days versus previous 7 days, which also USA hold the highest number, which 820 cases, followed by India 510 cases, Brazil 420 cases, and 310 cases for both Russia and France. These two pictures are all about Malaysia cases of COVID-19, which the left figure shows positive cases of COVID-19 by state as at 6 November. The total number of positive cases of COVID-19 is 38,189 cases, which from it the total number of new cases is 1,755, which shows the highest number of daily infections since the third wave of COVID-19. The yellow circle shows the cumulative numbers of discharge, which is 26,380 patients has been discharged at this date. Moving to the pink circle here, at this date, Malaysia has reached its death toll to 279 victims. And lastly, the orange circle shows the numbers of patients that admitted for intensive care unit, which are 83 patients in total. As we can see here, the leading state is Sabah, which the cumulative cases of positive COVID-19 as at 6 November is 19,282 cases. The second highest state is Selangor, with 5,754 cases, followed by Kuala Lumpur, 3,136 cases. Moving to the right picture, it shows the distribution of COVID-19 cases according to date of confirmation. The orange bar graph shows the numbers of cases, which on 6 November is the highest number of daily cases since third wave of COVID-19, which Sabah for the first time recorded new 4-digit figures in a single day with 1,199 cases appeared only in Sabah. And the line graph shows the trend of discharge, which the highest number was in 31st October with 1,000 patients discharged on that day. This slide is just the same like the previous slide that I've explained before, which the figures shows the summary of COVID-19 cases in Malaysia as at 6 November 2020. How severe the virus infectious to people? According to KKM, infected to people when they have symptom fever over 38 Celsius and above, tiredness and dry cough. It also could be common symptoms that will detect as inclusive, where the result will be in positive or negative COVID-19. Some people will experience in different ways, such as diarrhea, runny nose, itches, and pain. On average, it will take 5 to 6 days from when someone is infected with virus to show. Moreover, it can take up to 14 days. It can be infectious, will spread primarily through droplets generated when an infected person cough or sneeze, or through droplet of saliva. So here's some ways to prevent from the coronavirus. People are advised to protect themselves by clean their hands frequently with at least 60% alcohol-based hand sanitizer or wash with the soap and water. People are advised to apply the 7 proper steps in washing hands that have been provided and suggested by KKM. This step is important to ensure that our hands are fully sanitized. Next, wear the mask when going out, and if you are not feeling well, to avoid this virus spread without your consent. Choosing a right mask to wear also important things to be considered. The preferred mask that most of us wear right now is the 3-ply surgical mask. Next, quarantine yourself around 14 days and make social distancing with people even in your own house to avoid the virus spread. Social distancing is important to be practiced at least 1 meter ahead between each person. According to WHO, the aim of social distancing is to slow the spread of disease by stopping chains of transmission of COVID-19 and preventing new ones from appearing. And lastly, drink a lot of plain water to make yourself more hydrated and energy. When the first cases started? It started when earliest case detected on 17 November. A 55 years old from Hubei province could have been the first person to contract with COVID-19. 1 month after the date, there were 1 to 5 new cases reported each day. Almost 80,000 of the cases occurred in China. World Health Organization reported that the first confirmed case has been diagnosed on 8 December. When it is started in Malaysia, on 24th January 2020, 8 Chinese nationals were quarantined at a hotel in Johor Bahru after coming into contact with an infected person in neighboring Singapore. Despite early reports of them testing negative for the virus, 3 of them were confirmed to be infected on 25 January and subsequently quarantined at the Sungai Buloh Hospital in Selangor. On 4 February 2020, Malaysia announced 2 new cases including 41 years old local male, which was the first case involving a Malaysian. The case patient had a recent trip to Singapore and is quarantined in Sungai Buloh Hospital. On March 2020, Southeast Asian countries experienced a significant rise in cases following a Tabligh Jamaat event held at Jamit Mosque in Sri Petaling, Kuala Lumpur, where many people are believed to have been infected. On April 2020, every day the number of cases increasing because of cluster wedding at Bangi and students that studied abroad returned to their home, thus death also increasing in Malaysia. So here is a brief of COVID-19. This timeline shows the starting of COVID-19 that has been infected in Malaysia. On 25 January, the first case detected in Malaysia on travellers from China arriving via Singapore by the outbreak of COVID-19 in Hubei, China. On 27 February, it was low until this date, where Tabligh clusters had an event where it began to emerge in March on late February and early March, which leads to massive spikes in local cases. A few weeks after, Malaysia is the largest number of confirmed infections in Southeast Asia. On 16 March, the virus is reported in every state and federal territory in the country. A nationwide MCO intended to mitigate the spread of COVID-19. The MCO were implemented for 3 times from 18 March until 28 April. On 20 March, Malaysia reached 1,000 cases. On 27 March, a 62-year-old male patient was found to have committed suicide in Serdang Hospital due to depression. He also had cough, flu and breathing difficulties. The incident occurred at 7:40 p.m. in the bathroom in Ward 70 of the hospital. On 29 March, Malaysia recorded its highest daily fatality cases. On 28 April, Malaysia recorded its total death toll to 100 cases. On 1 May, Prime Minister announced that the MCO would ease on 4th May, when most businesses can open but must follow the SOP. What is SOP? A SOP is a standard operating procedure. It's a procedure specific to the business operation that describes the activities necessary to complete tasks in accordance with industry regulations and provincial laws. The aim of standard operating procedure is to provide detailed instructions on how to carry out the task so that any team members can carry out the task correctly. Here is a brief of COVID-19 third wave in Malaysia. The third wave is driven by cases from clusters in Sabah and Kedah, with Selangor also recording a notable increase in cases. On 31st August, new cases of COVID-19 in Sabah began when 2 illegal migrants were detained at the Lahad Datu District Police Headquarters Lokap, Sabah on 24th August and later tested positive for COVID-19 on 31st August. On 7 September, Sabah saw a sharp increase in cases since due to the Benteng Lahad Datu cluster. More cases were then traced at the Tower prison after several inmates with travel history to the Lahad Datu Police Headquarters tested positive. On 8 September, the number of cases in Kedah shot up since the Sungai cluster in Kedah recorded a rise in COVID-19 cases with 23 new cases. The cluster originated from a 39-year-old healthcare worker at a private medical center who had infected her colleagues and family members. On 26 September, the Sabah state election was held, and since then, many of those returning from the state had tested positive for COVID-19. On 30 September, a new cluster named Tembok Cluster later emerged following the death of a 46-year-old man who had worked at a prison in Alostar, Kedah. A COVID-19 test after his death found the man to have been infected with the virus. Since then, the cluster has recorded 1,334 cases, which make up 96% of the total cases in the state. On 4th October, Selangor residents who returned from Sabah queuing to get free COVID-19 screening at Selcare Clinic in Puncak. The Selangor state government provided free COVID-19 screening for residents who returned from Sabah before the federal government imposed mandatory screening at airport. At this date, the number of cases each day keep increasing until today. Government action in COVID-19. First phase, Restriction Movement Order (RMO) by Minister in the country started 18 March until 1 April 2020 to safety precaution to break the chain. Second phase, MCO started involve Malaysian Armed Forces in the restriction for control the community movement such as roadblock, only head of family can go to shopping, groceries and etc. As an additional info, a total of 7,000 MAF personnel have been deployed to assist the Royal Malaysian Police in enforcing the second phase of the Movement Control Order beginning 1 April. Enforcement of MCO has become more effective and orderly after the Malaysian Armed Forces were deployed to help police in their tasks. The government gave initiatives like Bantuan Sara Hidup, Bantuan Prihatin Nasional to community for survive during RMO. Third phase, RMO still extended 14 April until 28 April and anyone caught defying the order will be summarily detained for legal action. And lastly, fourth phase, the movement control order has been extended for another 2 weeks from 28 April until 12 May. The government also allowed university students to return home. And here is the government action in third wave of COVID-19, which happened right now in our country. Phase of Conditional Movement Control Order (MCO) in Malaysia. First phase, Senior Minister, Securities Cluster Datuk Sri Ismail Sabri Yaakob announced that the government has agreed to enforce Conditional Movement Control Order in Selangor, Kuala Lumpur and Putrajaya effective from 12 AM on 14 October to 27 October 2020. Same MCO for Sabah was imposed a day earlier. Second phase, CMCO was extended for another 2 weeks from 27 October until 9 November. Third phase, employees in the private and public sectors at the management and supervisory levels in areas under the Conditional Movement Control Order, which are Kuala Lumpur, Putrajaya, Selangor, Labuan and Sabah, have been instructed to work from home starting Thursday, 22 October. Fourth phase, Senior Minister Ismail Sabri Yaakob announced that the Malaysian government would be reinstating its CMCO throughout Peninsular Malaysia with the exception of Kelantan, Perlis and Pahang between 9 November and 6 December 2020. In addition, CMCO measures for Sabah, Selangor, Kuala Lumpur and Putrajaya, which were scheduled to end on 9 November, were extended until 6 December. It's a stimulus package that announced by the government. I am very sure that we are all very aware with the impact of COVID-19 to the economic condition, not only in Malaysia, but also affected to the whole world. Due to that, Malaysia government has announced stimulus package in the effort to revive the country's economy. So, first of all, a stimulus package worth 20 billion ringgit Malaysia was announced by Malaysia government to enable the tourism and other industries in the country to deal with the impact of the coronavirus pandemic. Further, 1 billion ringgit has been earmarked towards a food security fund to aid the agriculture sector. A 50 billion ringgit loan scheme will also be set up for larger companies. The scheme will offer guarantees for up to 80% of the amount borrowed by the companies. A second stimulus package worth 250 billion ringgit was announced, out of which 25 billion ringgit will be provided to help families and business owners affected by the outbreak. The people affected will be provided with one-off payments and discount will be offered on utilities. The state of Sarawak announced a stimulus package of 1.15 billion ringgit for the state to deal with the economic impact of the outbreak. This slide shows the eligibility criteria for Malaysian to be able to receive the Bantuan Prihatin Nasional Initiative that has been announced by the government in the aim to help the B14 to survive during the pandemic. So there are 4 categories who are eligible for the BPN initiative, which are the household income 4,000 ringgit and below. Secondly, household income in the range of 4,001 ringgit to 8,000 ringgit. Single with the income 2,000 ringgit and below. And lastly, single with income between 2,001 ringgit to 4,000 ringgit. So for the first category, the household income of 4,000 ringgit and below will receive BPN aids for 1,600 ringgit. The payment will be made twice, which are in April 1,000 ringgit and in May 600 ringgit. Move to second category, which the household income is the range of 4,001 ringgit to 8,000 ringgit will receive 1,000 ringgit of BPN aids, which payment also will be made twice on April and May, both 500 ringgit for each month. Third category, which is single with the income of 2,000 ringgit and below, will receive BPN aids for 800 ringgit. The payment will be on April with the amount 500 ringgit and the balance will be paid in the month of May. And last category, which is single with the income between 2,001 ringgit to 4,000 ringgit, receive VPN aids for 500 ringgit and payment will be paid on April and May for 250 ringgit for each month. The pandemic impact to business and economy. The pandemic has caused a great impact to all business and economy all over the world, and this makes Malaysia's economic growth has slowed down to 4.3% in 2019, which is the lowest since 2016 and below the average 5.4% growth rate recorded since 2010. The economy has slowed down due to the movement control order that have been imposed by the government to break the chain of COVID-19. So people can't do their normal routine as the restriction movement has shut schools and all non-essential businesses that confine people to their homes except to buy food and closed Malaysia's borders to tourists since March 18. Such companies have recorded results which could differ significantly from normal business conditions or possibly incur operating losses. In Malaysia, travel and tourism and related sectors such as accommodation, hotels are expected to be among the sectors that are most affected. Since the entry ban, many hotels are struggling to survive. It can be said that Malaysia will lose at least 60% of its tourism business by 2020, says Yap Lin Seng, CEO of the Malaysian Hotel Association. The result, wage cuts and unpaid holidays. This is the only chance to save the jobs. But often, smaller hotels can't afford this. Thousands of employees in the industry will find themselves on the street. Airline companies also affected by the pandemic in Malaysia, such as AirAsia and Malaysia Airlines. According to the International Air Transport Association (IATA), February and March passenger traffic declined 40.1% and is said to be the steepest drop since the 9/11 terrorist attacks. Thus, the fall in demand will be the deepest from April until June this year with 71% slump. This three graph shows how bad the pandemic has impacted Malaysia. The first graph illustrates the unemployment rate from January to September 2020. During the pandemic of COVID-19, the unemployment rate shows double increase from the period before pandemic in January. The unemployment rate in January is 3.2%, while in May increases double to 5.2%. This second graph is a line graph that shows the Malaysia's GDP growth from year 2016 to 2020. Before the pandemic occurred in year 2020, the GDP growth from year 2016 until 2019 shows positive percent, which above 4.3%, but in year 2020 it is forecasted to be negative 2.0. It shows a bad economic performance for Malaysia. And the last bar graph shows the inflation rate from January until September 2020. As the pandemic occurred, the purchasing power is decreased. Thus, the inflation rate shows the negative figure, which the highest on April and May with negative 2.8%. Here are some suggestions or recommendations that we can apply in our daily life. So firstly, community in Malaysia must have high awareness in this situation, which they must play important role as a good society by following every rule that government has implemented. For example, people need to follow the SOP that the government has provided for good. Secondly, everyone is advised to practice good hygiene, social distancing, avoid mass gathering, and always stay safe. Next, Malaysians must be extra alert in every issue that is happening in Malaysia and prohibited to spread rumours. As a good citizen, we should always keep updated with the latest news from the authorised platforms such as online newspapers, the World Health Organization website, the Kementerian Kesihatan Malaysia website, and etc. Avoid sharing things that are received from unauthorized mediums to prevent panic attacks to others. And lastly, determine the need for additional resources and capacities during possible future pandemic waves, such as the essential in order to be well prepared and organized for upcoming news. As we don't know what will happen next, we are advised to always be prepared with any possibilities that can be occurred in future.
7.0 Sub-region. In sub-region, we have 7.1 mainland countries and 7.2 insular countries. On your right side, we can see the figure show map of mainland countries. So we have Burma is Myanmar, Vietnam, Laos, Thailand, and Cambodia. And in your left side, we have Insular. The figure show map of insular countries. So we have Brunei, Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, and East Timor. 7.1 Mainland Southeast Asia. Mainland Southeast Asia included Myanmar, Thailand, Cambodia, Laos, and Vietnam. The mainland countries included Myanmar, Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam. It is actually an extension of the Asian continent. Muslims can be found in all mainland countries, but the most significant populations are in southern Thailand and western Myanmar, Arakan. The Cham people of central Vietnam and Cambodia are also Muslim. Before we go further into manufacturing activities, I want to share you about economic crisis late 1990s. Rapid economic growth in non-communist ASEAN countries began to a halt in the late 1990s when overlending by banks in the region caused a major financial crisis. Many countries had to devalue their currencies. Thailand's economy suffered the most. The financial crisis led to a change in Thailand's government, which imposed austerity measures and distanced itself from the past with a new constitution. The problems were caused by high levels of foreign borrowing, government budget deficits, major bank loans to cluttered property market, and slower than expected economic growth. Huge Japanese investment in the late 1980s and growth in export from Southeast Asian countries were linked to a high yen value against the US dollar by the late 1990s. However, the value of the yen fell, forcing the Japanese to slow investment and technology transfer to Southeast Asia. Thailand after the crisis. The 1997 financial crisis in Thailand left many unfinished and empty commercial and residential towers in Bangkok skyline. Rising returns on property investment in the mid-1990s made the price of land and buildings rise as borrowing became more competitive and cheaper, expanding an asset bubble. The bubble burst when a loss of confidence led depositors to withdraw their funds from banks, putting pressure on the baht, Thailand currency, which was allowed to float and move downward. The cost of foreign debt doubled and banks and businesses collapsed, leaving the building shell as worthless asset. Debt is lower the country's economy in the early 2000s, leaving half the industrial capacity idle. Despite these difficulties, Thailand's major export industry of oil products and vehicles grew and welcomed fresh investment from BMW, GM, and Toyota. Exports to China have tripled since 7.1.1 Manufacturing activities. Type of product: sophisticated manufacturing, industry, automobile. Location: Pluak Daeng District, Rayong, Thailand. Company: BMW, Mini, BMW Motorrad. Additional information: BMW Global Production Network, at which products of the three brands BMW, Mini, and BMW Motorrad are produced, making the plant in Thailand one of the most efficient and flexible assembled plants in the world. Plus, BMW, one of the most well-known established car brands in the world. I want to share you some of history of BMW manufacturing Thailand. In the 70 years that BMW manufacturing Thailand has been open, the plant has made a lasting impression. BMW Manufacturing Thailand Company Limited first opened its door in April 2000 after 2 years of construction. Since then, BMW Group has invested greater than 4 billion Thai baht. The plant recently celebrated the production of 70,000 vehicles, which are BMW Mini and BMW Motorrad. Currently, there are over 900 employees associated on site, which is almost double the number of people that were employed in 2000. Since 2006, BMW Manufacturing Thailand location is considered a custom-free zone.
CKC Holdings was established and officially registered in Cambodia since 2004 and located at Phnom Penh, Cambodia. CKC has conducted its activities in various business fields, including export of Cambodian rice and agricultural products. Rice makes up half of Cambodia's agricultural GDP. This country is also one of the top 10 rice exporters in the world, which export 620,000 tons in 2009. Approximately 19% of Cambodia's population live in rural areas. Much of them are dependent upon agriculture to help them survive. Vietnamese banks are offering services in bank industry, and it is one of the famous banks in Vietnam. It is located in main Hanoi. Established in 1988, Vietnamese provides commercial banking products and services to individuals and corporate customers in the country. The bank manages 157 branch offices. This bank also has branches at Germany and Myanmar. People in Vietnam are used to buy things with cash and gold. According to their government, just 31% of Vietnamese adults have bank accounts, and more than 95% of payments are made with cash and gold. For them, cash is still the king.
Next, let's take a look to list of countries in Insular Southeast Asia, which are Malaysia, Singapore, Brunei, Indonesia, East Timor, and Philippines.
Economic activities in Insular Southeast Asia. So the first economic activities are in textile industry. Types of products is clothing. One of example textile company in Insular Southeast Asia is Kana Goods, which located at Kota Tangerang Selatan, Banten, Indonesia. Kana Goods, founded by Sankaya Rini, is one of the change makers in the Indonesian fashion scene. The brand was able to flourish with their signature eco-friendly and organic production of clothing through natural dyed colors. The brand's mission is to raise awareness regarding environmental issues while showcasing Indonesia's traditional patterns of batik as well as natural coloring materials from plants and leaf. Aside from promoting the slow fashion concept, Kana Goods also aims to avoid excess water usage and textile waste by making its products one size fits all. So here, I have a short video on Kana Goods. For additional information, Kana Goods product is based on the blue color. As you guys have seen in the video just now, The butter is produced all in blue color. The blue shades are derived from natural processing that involving Indigofera tinctoria plant that produce true indigo colors. It seems interesting, right? Okay, so let's know more about the Indigofera tinctoria plant. Indigofera tinctoria, also called true indigo, is a species of plant from the bean family that was one of the original sources of indigo dye. It has been naturalized to tropical and temperate Asia as well as parts of Africa, but its native habitat is unknown since it has been in cultivation worldwide for many centuries. Today, most dye is synthetic, but natural dye from Indigo tinctoria is still available, marketed as natural coloring where it is known as tarum in Indonesia and nila in Malaysia. The second economic activities in Insular Southeast Asia is in mining industry. Types of products is petroleum. One of the company that run in this industry is Brunei National Petroleum Company Sdn Bhd, which located at Yayasan Sultan Haji Hassan Al Bolkiah Complex, Jalan Pridi, Bandar Seri Begawan, Brunei. Brunei National Petroleum Company Sdn Bhd, also known as Petroleum Brunei, is Brunei Darussalam National Oil Company. Petroleum Brunei was incorporated on 14 January 2002 to realize and enhance the value of hydrocarbons of designated petroleum blocks to the country. Petroleum Brunei is wholly owned by the government of His Majesty the Sultan and Yang di-Pertuan of Brunei Darussalam. For additional information, Brunei Darussalam holds 1.1 billion barrels of proven oil reserve as of 2016 and ranking 39 in the world and accounting for about 0.1% of the world's total oil reserve of 1.65 trillion barrels. Brunei Darussalam has proven reserve equivalent to 188.4 times its annual consumption. Wow, it's amazing, right? Lastly, the economic activities in Insular Southeast Asia is manufacturing in food and beverage processing industry. The type of product is food and beverages. The example of company is Universal Robina Corporation, which located at Quezon City, Philippines. Universal Robina Corporation is one of the largest branded consumer food and beverage product companies in the Philippines. The company has a significant and growing presence in the ASEAN and Oceania markets. It is among the Philippines' pioneers in the industries. It has been operating for over 15 years since Mr. John Gokokwe established Universal Corn Products Incorporated in 1954, a cornstarch manufacturing plant in Pasig City. Mr. John envisioned URC to become a premier food and beverage player across the ASEAN region. With strong market position, URC products are also exported to other markets like the US, Europe, Japan, Korea, and Middle East, and also in West Africa like Ghana and Nigeria through the URC Thailand office. In 2014, URC started its venture to develop markets such as New Zealand and Australia, which is now called URC Oceania. For additional information, Universal Robin Corporation and the Gokokwe Brothers Foundation have been distributing products to several checkpoints and hospitals dealing with suspected and confirmed cases of COVID-19. So that's all from us. Thank you for watching. Stay safe, everyone.